It is Friday, April 14th. Let's talk PlayStation. Hello everyone, welcome back to another lovely week of LTPS. We have a lot of PS Plus news to go over, and we normally start with that anyway, so let's dive right in. First is your weekly reminder for the PS Plus Essential Games, so grab those. They're still live on PSN, but more notably, we have the April PS Plus Extra and Premium lineup as well, which that'll go live on the 18th, this coming Tuesday. And it still looks pretty good. Not the best month, but, still very serviceable when we've got games in there like Kena Bridge of Spirits, Doom Eternal, Slay the Spire. I heard that one's really good. You've also got The Evil Within, and even Sackboy Big Adventure, which means that title's just going to outlive its time on PS Plus, because it's currently on Essential, so once it leaves, it's still on there, but you need to subscribe to Extra. And also, we had a bonus game called Anodyne, which that game is not, it's already live on PSN. It wasn't in the last month lineup, and you don't have to wait for this Tuesday. It just kind of appeared on PSN, so no complaining there, but that one's also in the game catalog currently. And then for PlayStation Plus Premium, we've got Doom 1, 2, 64, and Doom 3, and then also Dishonored, the Definitive Edition. So not quite something where they're brand new classic PS1, PS2, or PSP games per se, but these are very much still classic games in that they are the OG Doom titles, just they were already on PSN. You could have bought them a while ago, but now they're on PlayStation Plus Premium. And also for Dishonored, that is a remastered PlayStation 3 game where it's, shipped natively on PS4. So the good news there is that you can play that game natively and not have to stream it. So definitely good news there. And yes, we are seeing Sony continue to make arrangements with Microsoft and Bethesda for what are a bunch of back catalog Bethesda games on PS Plus, which kind of like what we've said before on this topic, it's likely something where the kind of folks that are responsible for arranging these deals between Sony and Microsoft are very low on the totem pole when it comes to what is a lot of growing animosity between the companies, and that's higher up on that pole, right? So when it comes to Microsoft, Sony, the ABK deal, and also it's in Microsoft's best interest anyway to keep licensing content to a rival platform holder like Sony. So I'm not sure there's much that really needs to be said outside of business as usual, despite this whole other, thing going on, this elephant in the room, as it were. But more PS Plus news. So we have a lot of games leaving PS Plus Extra and Premium on May 16th, and this is separate from the PS Plus collection, which is still going away on May 9th. So this is the same deal where these titles, when they're leaving, you can't just claim them. So get your playtime in on any of these games that are leaving in, a little over a month's time. And there's some pretty big standout titles in here, like Marvel Spider-Man, both the base game and the Game of the Year edition, which some might ask, why is Sony removing their own games? Now, they have done that before, but at least in this case, this might be something where it's because it's a Marvel property, not entirely sure. But yeah, that one is leaving. Also, Homefront: The Revolution, Shenmue 3, Red Faction, Metro Last Light, and the Metro 2033 Redux games. That's kind of a big loss there. Virginia, that one is really cool. I platinumed that one a long time ago. But yeah, there's a lot of games leaving PS Plus relatively soon. So get your playtime in on any of these games because they will be leaving in about a month. Now, more PS Plus news here, but a PS Plus premium game, and one that you can also buy a la carte, I believe, Echo Shift, PSP title. That one recently got trophies, so you'll love to see it. Sony's still going back and patching the games they've already shipped on PSN, so love to see that. And then for Siphon Filter Dark Mirror, so Bend has been single-handedly really carrying PS Plus Premium in a big way where they're showing people how it's done. Not only are they shipping a lot of games on Premium, bringing back their classic titles, letting you buy them separately, honoring purchases when it's possible, but they recently patched Dark Mirror so that it uses a second stick on PS4, PS5. That was the problem with this game and really any third-person shooter or twin-stick shooter that was released on PSP, because there is no second stick, so these games are kind of janky to play, but they recently patched this game, so now it uses the right stick. Now, having said that, it would still be much preferred to have a system-level feature that allows the face buttons to be remapped. That way there's no need for developer intervention, but hey, at least Bend is really doing almost doing too much. I love it, but that also bodes well for when they finally get to Resistance Retribution as well, which I still cannot wait for that to come back. Now, our final PS Plus news item here is that the revelation recently came up that Sony is not sending out emails anymore when you claim your free PS Plus games. We all know what they do with this. You know, we've had this around for 10 plus years where you claim your monthly titles and then, you know, let's say you don't check your phone for a few hours or something. You look down, you've got 3 emails saying thank you for your purchase, and you're sitting there scrambling, wondering, oh my God, what did I do? Is my account compromised? I don't remember buying these. And then you check it, and it's a receipt for $0 for the free games that you claimed. And every single time I always think of that meme that came out where it's that Office meme, he's being thanked for downloading his free games. So maybe Sony really has stopped doing this because as far as I can not remember, but I did not get any emails for April. But I'm seeing some folks say that they are still getting the emails, so I don't know, but I will say they are pretty redundant, so this was a long time coming. Some people like them, like they want the proof in the paper trail, but I don't know. They seem redundant to me, so maybe they finally have stopped that. As for some other smaller news stories from this past week, Sony launched a brand new YouTube channel called PlayStation Esports, which will be a place where they now primarily do what they've been doing on their main channel, which is live streams for various esports events and, you know, occasionally promoting PlayStation tournaments and things like that. You know, we've seen in recent years that Sony has really tried to associate the brand with esports by also acquiring Repeat.gg and the joint acquisition of Evo, so now they've got their own dedicated channel for esports events. Something else that was also pretty interesting was Fantavision 2020X, which recently came out on PS5 and PSVR 2. And I always think that's such a funny, you know, interesting property that Sony owns because it was originally a tech demo for PS2, and Sony loves turning their tech demos into full games because then it launched on PS2 day one, and then it came back 20 years later. And the news here is that Fantavision 2020X is getting a PC port on April 27th. So Sony is willing to port big budget PlayStation Studio games and also Fantavision as well. Maybe we'll see Super Rub-a-Dub make a return. Now, I also thought we should check in on PlayStation Stars, Sony's loyalty program, which has been out for a while now, and I thought this would be an opportune time because they recently released a digital collectible for Shuhei Yoshida himself, Employee 32. If you want the Shuhei digital collectible, all you have to do is play one of Shuhei's recommended games. And I'm just kind of really loving that they're getting so, not obscure, but like they're just appealing to that kind of audience that would like these sort of things, right? So whether it's the consoles or accessories that they're offering as a digital collectible or something like Folding at Home or PlayStation Home and now Shuhei, like I just like that they're appealing to that kind of audience for PlayStation Stars. If you don't care about the well, I mean, you should always care about loyalty points that you can use to redeem real cash, but the collectibles I think are certainly a fun little thing to toy around with. Now let's move on to this recent state of play for Final Fantasy XVI, which aired just yesterday, and I'm not really sure what I can add here beyond wow. I mean, I was already sold on the game, so I'm not surprised that they keep showing it. This is really something that Square does a lot with their games. Certainly their big titles where they'll, you know, release a lot of footage. They'll do, you know, specialized story trailers or typical launch trailer, maybe a 5 to 6 minute gameplay trailer, but then they do a lot of extended cuts. They do live streams. I mean, they do a lot of coverage for their big heavy hitter titles. So it's not uncharacteristic of Square, just that this was 20 plus minutes of gameplay. Probably a good thing to watch if you haven't seen much of FF16 so far, but if you've been following along, you might not really need to see this. Having said that, it does look so good. So there's a lot of combat sequences. The icon battles are in there. Another, you know, synopsis or plot breakdown, the same one we already know about. But there's that. You can see the the upgrade menu, the world map. They show a lot, and I'm sure there is more. In fact, they say they're going to show more ahead of the game's release this coming June, which, the game's already done. They've got a gold master. They're full steam ahead. But yeah, the game just looks fantastic. I was already sold. This still looks really good. And this was very much its own state of play, so there was no other games on there. So Sony does do that occasionally, and that means we're still waiting for a dedicated PlayStation showcase, which is still likely around late May, early June. Next up, we have another massive data point for PS5 console sales, which really illustrates just how well Sony's been doing now that they can finally make enough PS5s. So, as reported by the GfK, which tracks console and game sales in the UK, we learned that PS5 hardware is up 180% year over year compared to the first quarter of last year, which made PS5 account for over half of all consoles sold in the UK so far for 2023. Which is nuts. In fact, PS5 is the main driving force of year-over-year growth for console sales in the UK in general, despite Nintendo and Xbox seeing a year-over-year decline, which is just insane. And we're seeing that Sony is now able to finally get that substantial pull that we were all expecting they could reasonably do if they were just able to make enough consoles. So between the UK, which is, just one area, right? But we also look at the MPD group, now called Circana, tracking video game hardware and software sales in the US, and we see crazy numbers there as well that we've talked about. But just another wild thing to hear that for the first 3 months of this year, more than half of those consoles sold in the UK have been PlayStation 5s. Now, in other hardware news, we have a rumored release window for the rumored Q-Lite, which is the codename for the PlayStation 5 Remote Play dedicated device, and also the rumored earbuds and headphones, which have all primarily come from Tom Henderson for InsiderGaming.com, where recently, when speaking on the Iron Lords podcast, Tom said that the Q-Lite and also the earbuds and headset should be coming November of this year. Now, we talked about this last week where at the time, it was said that it was going to be after the detachable disk drive console, but before a PS5 Pro, which gives it a timeline of, after September 2023, but before, around November 2024. I just assumed that, okay, maybe that's like a Q1 2024 thing, but the way Tom is phrasing it, it sounds like they're trying to get a lot of new accessories out on time for this holiday season, which these are all accessories. I mean, even the PS5 Q-Lite device, that is very much an accessory to standard PS5 ownership, where it is meant to be tethered to PS5s, considering it's going to be primarily a remote play device, because it seemingly won't be able to independently connect to PSN and say, just use PS Plus Premium Cloud Streaming or something like that. Now, maybe it can happen over time with a software update or something, not entirely sure, but at the very least, it sounds like we should be expecting November for all these rumored devices, if Tom is to be believed. We'll talk more about this when we get another update or another rumor. Now, on a related note, we can also move on to a recent report from The Verge about how Sony's doing a lot of hiring for their next major push in the cloud gaming space, because they're looking for 20 plus positions to be filled, all primarily engineers. They'll be reporting to the Sony Interactive Entertainment Future Technology Group, and many of these job listings say you'll be responsible for developing and delivering the strategic vision for cloud game streaming at PlayStation. And, this is something where the past 2-3 years, we always see, even further back, we see plenty of job listings for cloud gaming or patents for cloud gaming technology. Sony's a big company. They're always doing these things behind the scenes and working on new stuff, but this report really illustrates how they just might finally be working on a sort of 2.0 version of what they've been doing for the longest time, which is seemingly not nothing, but if you're a consumer, it feels like that, right? Because Sony historically does like to get in early on a lot of these, new emerging ideas and technology. And so, in this case, we can see them go as far back as at least in terms of a consumer-facing feature, something like remote play on PS3 and PSP, right? But when it comes to actual cloud streaming, you've got the 2013 acquisition of Gaikai, and then launching PS Now in 2014, experimenting with a lot of these questionable monetization angles with PS Now until they eventually settled on one subscription fee for a library of games. And but a lot of it has been the same since then, right? Even after the PlayStation Plus relaunch, it's still like nothing's changed behind the scenes, right? It's still Amazon Web Services. It's still the same experience that PS Now is offering. We still don't have PS5 server blades. So despite a lot of consumers not really caring about cloud streaming or how the experience is not good, well, it's not good because nobody's doing it good enough just yet. Even Google Stadia, which offered, something quite serviceable, it was still tough for them to really get their foot in the door, but that's also for a myriad of other reasons. Point being, Sony is due for really what I like to call a 2.0 version of this, right? So perhaps they're finally getting ready to do just that with the amount of hiring that's going on and the way these the language being used in these job listings. So it's an eventuality, I would say, but something where perhaps we can expect this in the short term, in the next few years, when they decide to finally relaunch all this stuff in a big way. Now, we've got a major update for a PlayStation Studio developer, Media Molecule, where they're finally outlining what's next for the studio, and that comes at the expense of Dreams, where Dreams is pretty much being cut off here because there's going to be no more updates to Dreams after September 1st. Between now and September, they're still planning on doing an animation update and also a server migration, which will be happening in late May. And they'll also be launching another original game called Tren inside Dreams, which they recently announced. A lot of what they outlined is basically prepping the game for a suitable afterlife. So with the server migration, there's changes being made to storage limits, archiving, they're removing prize bubbles, they're taking out the Twitch integration, they're adjusting trophy requirements, home spaces will be local only, and just more and more adjustments like that. Effectively, the game will still very much be online and playable. You can still create, and there's still going to be curation and community engagement, but long term, this is the end of Dreams, and Media Molecule is moving on to something else. They say, and I quote here, Media Molecule will continue to work on bringing joyful, playful, innovative experiences to players around the world. We're currently working on a new project that we're not ready to talk about at this stage, but stay tuned for more information in the future. We're very proud of Dreams and grateful for the way you, the community, have embraced all it has to offer. Whilst we've always had the desire to build on the foundation of Dreams and expand the experience, when reviewing our plans, we were not able to define a sustainable path. We made the decision to change the studio product strategy. This is obviously disappointing to many people inside and outside of Media Molecule. However, we are incredibly excited for what will come next. Technically, Dreams has only been out proper for 3-something years, but this would definitely be cut short of what was meant to be a 10+ year roadmap of supporting Dreams, and there was always this sort of expected eventuality of we'll get a native PS5 version, we'll get a PC version, we'll get PSVR 2 support. They'll always be updating the creation tools. There were always these talks of creators being able to monetize and publish their creations on the PlayStation Store. There were a lot of big picture ideas for Dreams that in theory could have worked if not for the fact that Dreams just was not seeing the engagement that it needed, which I think is them being pretty candid in that last quote there. And we always touch on Dreams occasionally. I'll always vouch for how impressed I am with the tools and what creators are willing to do, but there's really no mistaking the problem with this game, which is that coming from somebody where I loved Little Big Planet as a player and creator, I always like to say I was like an intermediate builder on LPP. I've got probably multiple hundreds of hours creating on LBP because they're very approachable tools. Now, I can't make anything incredibly complex, but when you put the time into it, you can get something out of it. And so I've got, decent levels on there that are kind of in between, a step up from beginner, but a step below some of those wild viral levels on LBP. But LBP was also a lot more conducive to playing and having fun, which, not to say that Dreams doesn't have that same appeal, but there was something lacking with Dreams that it just did not resonate with people the same way LBP did, which is a shame because it's so wild what can be made on Dreams, but I could not take to those tools whatsoever. I tried with the initial soft launch on the PlayStation Store, fell out of it pretty quickly. It's great for playing, right? When people make something really cool on there, even jumping back in to record some footage, I can easily get lost in it, but this was probably for the best because when you look at just simple things regarding this game, whether it's, Media Molecule's Twitter, the live streams they do, their YouTube channel, I mean, the engagement is not there. The numbers are so small. That might seem like a poor way to judge it, but it's still a pretty decent metric to look at and say, hey, nobody plays this game. Nobody talks about this game. There's just not enough there. I hate that that's I hate that that's the conclusion, but there's a lot of talented folks at Media Molecule, and they made something as magical as LBP before, and they even did Tearaway, which Tearaway was also a wonderful game that I still think about occasionally because of kind of what it did on PlayStation Vita at the time, that we can get something like that again. That's more of a game first, and then if we want to do tools and user generated content after the fact, there's always a place for that. But the way that Dreams did it, I guess clearly it was not viable long term, and it seems like between Media Molecule coming to terms with that, maybe Sony also finally stepping in and being like, hey, I'm sorry, we gave you enough time, but this just isn't going anywhere. It's probably a lot of very tough conversations that had to take place behind the scenes, but I do think that this is better for Media Molecule, and knowing that they're now working on a new IP, I think we can finally start paying attention to them in a big way, but at least Dreams is very much still ongoing. They do seem like they're properly prepping this game for a good afterlife where it's not left to rot. I certainly hope that's the case, right? So it's not like Dreams is done, but we should not be expecting any more content updates for Dreams after September 1st as Media Molecule looks towards the future. Next up, we have some PlayStation Productions news for The Last of Us Part 2, or rather The Last of Us Season 2, which we know is coming. Esquire recently ran a piece speaking with Pedro Pascal and also Bella Ramsey and Craig Mazin, and discussing how they're going to approach Season 2, or rather the open secret about what happens in Part 2. And so spoilers ahead, but both Bella and Pedro are well aware of Joel's fate in the second game. And Bella says, and I quote here, "If that does take place in the show, I don't know that I'm emotionally ready for it." Pedro says it wouldn't make sense to follow the first game so faithfully only to stray severely from the path. Craig Mazin says, "This should be fairly obvious to anyone by now, but I don't fear killing characters, but the important thing to note is that neither Neil nor I feel constrained by the source material." Seems like this is still a topic of conversation surrounding how they're going to approach Season 2, many hoping that they change things, many hoping that they don't change things. But again, I think it kind of goes back to look at what they did for Season 1, which is they took certain liberties where it made sense, but pound for pound, Season 1 is the first game in many ways, and a lot of it's extremely faithful. Oftentimes shot for shot, line for line. I think we'll see a lot of that again in Part 2. which also means there are certain story beats that we should be expecting. Now, we also have a minor update on Neil Blomkamp's Gran Turismo movie. Reporting from Empire Online, we have one new still image showing Archie Madekwe and David Harbour, where there they are. They're, Archie's playing as Jan Martinborough, the kid that went through the Gran Turismo Academy and eventually became a real race car driver. And so Neil at least talks about how a big part of this movie is going to be not only extremely intense races, real people, but something where it's a character-driven story, and so something where the human relationships are just as important, if not more intense, than the racing, but the racing is still bloody intense as well, as he puts it. Gran Turismo, at the very least, they're doing, they can actually say this is based on a real-life story. I mean, if you were going to do a Gran Turismo adaptation, this would be probably the only story that you can really tell outside of just making something up. So this one is still very much on the way as well under the PlayStation Productions label. Now, with all that said, it is time for Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter, and if you would like to win a $10 PSN code, it's very easy. You can follow the link down below, supporting this channel a number of ways and get you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week because I'm trying to help pay for your games. Those are all the news stories that I wanted to talk about to you all from this past week, and we had no Tuesday video, but one on Sunday, which was me getting a bit nostalgic for iconic PlayStation E3 moments, so did kind of a mashup on the news that E3 is likely dead, so you can go check that out. But yeah, I had to leave town on Tuesday, so didn't have enough time to get an upload ready to go, but I've said before, I'm just going to give myself more breathing room for those Tuesday videos, which may very well now be Wednesday or Thursday videos or something, but usually we'll still try to aim for Tuesday, but that is pretty much it, I think. So that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.